So hi, my name is Callie Burke. I'm coming to you from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And today we're going to be talking about the space out challenges developed by NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And we also have Ryan Koberg of Space Florida joining us. So just a little bit of background on me. I'm an aerospace engineer. I work for NASA's Launch Services Program, and I do trajectory work. So I make sure that when we launch NASA's robotic spacecraft, they're going to be studying the Earth, launching telescopes, going to other planets, or studying the sun. I make sure they get to the right place at the right time and that we don't break them along the way. And then Ryan, if you want to get a little introduction to yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ryan Koberg. I'm a project manager for research and development at Space Florida. I primarily work with everything related to education and workforce development, everything from research grants to Florida universities to helping with competitions. And right in the middle of all competition season, had NASA Swarmathon at KSC yesterday, got space steps tomorrow. And then the week after, egg drop competition. A month later is the challenge. So there's a lot of hands-on activities, and that's sort of my philosophy is that hands-on experience is really important for the upcoming generations in the workforce, especially for the space industry.
All right, thanks. So in addition to being a trajectory analyst, I'm also the lead of the. So we have a team here at Kennedy Space Center that works on International Space Apps Challenge. It's run out of NASA headquarters, but we support by developing challenges, and so that's what we'll be focusing on today. I'll be talking about the 5 challenges that Kennedy Space Center developed, and then Ryan will be talking about the one that Space Florida developed. And then we also support our local Central Florida events and try and connect. So great, and then we do have, it looks like we do have some questions coming in. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges. So what we'll go through first is, so we have a question from my rocket, so we'll go with that one first. So this is the one, so the description is to design a rocket that we built in place in one of the 4 bays of the vehicle assembly building at Kennedy Space Center. And to utilize additive manufacturing, 3D printing where possible, consider what materials could be brought in and which ones might have already been manufactured. And so basically what this challenge is that we have the vehicle assembly building where we have been basically assembling rockets since it was built for the Saturn V back in the 60s, which is the moon rocket that launched Apollo. We also used it for the space shuttle. We're planning on using it again for the Space Launch System. So that's a new vehicle, the NASA's heavy lift vehicle that could take us to the asteroids or the moon and beyond. And we also have other rocket companies. Orbital ATK is currently negotiating to use one of the high bays. So it's a place where we've been assembling rockets for a long time. What if we could be maybe building some of them too, using 3D printing, so imagining one. So this is kind of, it's an imagination exercise. And just thinking about if you could design a rocket in kind of a new way, where it's kind of being built in place, standing up inside the vehicle assembly building and then rolling out. And so some of the parts, no matter what, you probably will have to be manufactured outside. And we have new things like there's 3D printed rocket engines that are coming out. So there's just a lot of new exciting things going on with 3D printing right now. So we wanted to do that. And so this asks, what is the main problem we should discuss in the Print My Rocket Challenge? And so I'd say in the Print My Rocket Challenge, that's a tough one. And that's from Mustafa Awad. Is really considering that there's a lot of things to kind of consider. I'd say kind of one of the biggest challenges is figuring out what could be 3D printed in place and what has to be brought in, because rockets are made of there are different materials. There's things like electronics and hardware where it's a lot finer. And so especially you have to kind of, do a thought, imagine what kind of 3D printer that'd be this big is going around. And so, what materials can it use, and also how fine can it be? And where humans would be interacting with it. Because another thing that when you're designing a rocket is you have to, we're still at the point, humans are still involved. We still have to be able to access different parts of the rocket to do certain work and to install stuff. So you build a rocket, but then you have these other parts coming in that you're installing, and so that'll be a challenge, is to consider when they could come in, and maybe when also you could 3D print maybe up to certain places, but then maybe you have to stop and do installations. So these are all considerations, but we're looking forward to basically seeing what people put out there. So hopefully that answered your question. Let us know if that triggered anything more, or if you want any more clarifications to other points. Some of the other questions we've been getting on that challenge is, do you have to use a 3D program, or must use a 3D printer to make the model too? And this is true for a lot of space apps. It's you design it however you like. If you do a 3D CAD modeling, that is what people will be using. And so if you have those skills, go ahead and apply them. If you're still developing them, or you can either look for people outside your team, or just use a different method. You don't have. We're not going to say you have to do anything other than address the challenge in some way. If you have access to 3D printers, you could make a model of the rocket, but that's not necessary. Especially, it's going to be a very scaled down one. And so it would just kind of be an exercise in using a 3D printer to print your rocket. So it could be a fun thing to do extra, but we're really, this is looking at a very broad scale. And so we know we're not going to actually be printing a 3D rocket in the VAB right now. That's not what we're going to be doing, but it's to think about the design of it. And as far as what, people ask what kind of rockets to use, it's whatever rocket you think of, it could be used in one that's sending people somewhere, or cargo one. By building one in the VAB, you might be able to. We thought, you might be able to get higher than some of our assembly ones. We're not sure. You also have to think about how high off the ground the platforms are, and where the 3D printer is actually going to be in the VAB. Because to a certain amount, you have to kind of consider what the design of that part is, and how it might move up the different levels as you build different things. And so this is looking for also probably at least, we've done assembly, so this is not looking for just assembling in the VAB. We do want some of it to be manufactured in the VAB. So, and Ryan, I don't know if you have any questions about this one that you'd like to throw in that we could possibly answer. You can do this for any of our challenges.
Okay, I just so you know, I'm a little delayed, so we'll have to kind of wait for the response. But not particularly. Just make sure that if you're doing a challenge like this, that all the rockets of the world, of course, this is going to be housed in the VAB at NASA. So, more than likely a US rocket would probably be the best solution, because it's more likely to actually have a business that's able to launch from there. But it doesn't mean that international companies won't be able to do the same thing in the future. So look at the whole profile. Anything else, I'll be happy to, ask questions. If you've got questions, ask them, because that's how we can help streamline what your solutions to be efficient.
So, and it is, it's true that yes, that usually the US ones, but there's also things that we could learn from how other countries manufacture rockets that we would be happy to have applied here. Because people are different, we always take different approaches within the same country and in different countries, and so it's great. All right, so we have a question on Backfill My Model, so we'll go to that one next. And let me just check on Twitter to make sure we didn't have any additional ones come up for printing my rocket before we move on. Okay, I don't see anything. So, all right, so we'll move to Backfill My Model. And for this one, actually, we held a Google Hangout. It was about 20 minutes long, or not quite that long, on Monday. And so if you're working on this challenge, I highly recommend you go watch that video, because we talked with Mike Conroy. He does a lot of simulation work, and he's the one who developed this challenge. So he has a lot of really good information. And so this one is, we asked people to create a tool that will accept a very thin, scaled down, or surface only model and fill in behind the surface to get sufficient depth to allow printing on a 3D model printer. And so basically what happened with this with this challenge is that Mike works where he works with a lot of people across the Space Center, and we build a lot of big things here at Kennedy Space Center. It's kind of just the nature of our work. So the Orion capsule, it is quite, actually I'm not sure how tall it is, but it's quite large. It's not something that you can, if you go to a meeting and you want to talk about the Orion capsule, you can't just tote it around with you. And you know, he had another example of something that was 20 feet tall and I think almost that amount in diameter structure that he wanted, that people were talking about building. But having 3D models and be able to actually hold it in your hand and point to it and touch it and stuff is very useful communication. And so we want to make sure that we're doing a lot of work to communicate properly. And so 3D models are great for doing that when you're in a meeting. But one of the problems is we have these CAD models of these structures because they're actually going to be built. And so they're to the proper scaling. But if you try and shrink them down to something that fits in your hand, and so, you know, imagine a 20-foot structure and now it's a foot tall. There are parts of it that were an inch thick. And so now you're talking about a 20th of an inch. And so 3D printers have a very hard time printing that thin. It's not going to print right, or you can print it right, but it may break them. And so we don't want it to be quite delicate. And so when we have these scaled down models, it doesn't have to be perfect, everything. It just has to be, but it has to be representative of what the object is. And there are certain features that as you shrink them down, they were, you know, while they're perfectly good size when they're full scale model, on a smaller level, they're features that don't need to be included anymore. They can just kind of go away. It's really just the main bigger features that you want, and then also you want it thick enough that it doesn't break. And so, you know, one of the requests is for like some of the features to make sure that you can kind of specify how thick a part is, or what the minimum thickness when you're doing the 3D printing is. And so basically this is to do an automated process for it. So Mike and his team, when they have this, they will do it by hand and take the CAD models and scale, you know, scale them down, but then scale up different parts of it to make it thicker, to take out the features. And so if there's a way to do this automated, it would be really appreciated by their team. And then they also, you know, we think this other people, we're not the only ones that build big stuff. And so we're not the only ones that might be using this. So that was from Yasir Alahili. And so hopefully that was enough to answer your question. I really recommend you guys go watch that 18-minute Backfill My Model. It's on our YouTube channel, which is Space Apps KSE. But let us know if you have any additional questions, if there's more information you're looking for. So, and so we got another one. And so Yasir asked again, thanks, and would adding temporary surface algorithms to thin surface so the print would come out with more integrity? Or is the idea to increase thickness on those thin walls to some minimum thickness? Yeah, and so a big thing is to the idea is to increase the thickness of the thin walls so there's a minimum thickness, so that it's something that the printer can stably create, and that as we take it to meetings and people are handling it, we're not breaking it because it's so thin. And so I'm not sure, I haven't thought about this enough to think about the algorithms that would be used, but definitely the idea is to have a minimum thickness.
Yeah, and I think when you write your algorithms, you're going to have to weight the importance of different parts of a given structure, so that just say it's the outer core of the rocket, that has a stronger weight, because obviously if a wall becomes too thin, the minimum thickness is now thicker than the cylinder, it's going to protrude outside of it, and obviously there's no point of having it there at all. So you'll have to kind of figure out a smart way of saying, okay, it's gone past the minimum to a point where now it's just not part of the print, or it interferes with the rest of, you know, the given structure. So it's a, you know, very interesting scaling problem.
Yeah, because you will have parts of the rocket that might be, now that you have this minimum thickness, they're now impinging on each other.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is interesting. We look forward to what people come up with. And let's see if we had some of the other questions. And then there was another question, is the objective to create a tool to print the intricate parts or modify the printed parts? And so I would say it's to create a tool that prints, that modifies the intricate parts on a large scale to a printable level is really what it is. So kind of both. We want to, we can build the intricate one for the large one, which is what we will be doing, but we're looking for a modified version that is scaled down. And let me go and just check any other questions that might be hanging out there on Backfill My Model. Which the hashtag is 3D Backfill. Okay, I don't see anything. So we'll go next to Space Route 66. And so this is a challenge. And this, so I mean, when we consider, we thought about this in terms of Kennedy Space Center, but it's actually applicable to any spaceport around the world. And to develop a game or virtual experience that allows its users to build and explore futuristic spaceport. And so, you know, as we go to different types of horizontal and vertical launch and landings, you know, there's different tourist facilities, such as when people might be going to suborbital or orbital as tourists. What manufacturing we'll be having for spacecraft, you know, and actually we just had a factory that just signed up recently outside our gates. And then processing facilities for space resources. So there's a lot that goes on into a spaceport, but they're constantly changing. And so this is kind of a different version we did a couple of years ago. Kennedy Space Center 2040 was a challenge back in 2013. So this is a different version of that. And this is looking for a game or experience where the users get to pick what they choose. Whereas that one was just asking people to imagine what the spaceport would look like in 2040. But we want people to be able to play around with spaceports. And so you can build it off of Kennedy Space Center or one of the ones currently, or you could create your own. But there's a lot of considerations that go into a spaceport, such as you have to make, you know, safety. As far as that's why for when you launch rockets, they often take place over water or large swaths of land that have very few people on them. But this is kind of, you know, allows both you and the people who are going to be using your experience to kind of have fun with it and come up with your own ideas. So we have a lot of, you know, specific resources to where Kennedy Space Center, you know, where we've been moving and really becoming, we call it a multi-user spaceport. But, you know, we're thinking of this as, you know, over the next 50 years. So you can really let your imagination go wild, you know, look at papers as people talk about where things are going in the future and hopefully have a lot of fun with it. Let's see if there are any questions.
Hollywood had a lot of fun with imagining their future KSC in The Martian. They converted the entire campus into a futuristic looking campus, which is cool to see.
Yeah, it's always fun to see what people in movies and other art forms, what they imagine for space. So, but yeah, and so we have quite a few resources, but let us know if you have any further questions on that one. And actually, Brian, why don't we go ahead and have you talk about Book It to the Moon?
Okay, sure. So Book It to the Moon is an educational, entertainment, edutainment challenge. And the concept came up with it last year and just kind of sat on it until it was time to submit new challenges again. And so the idea is that, you know, you can be as creative as you want with it, but the basic idea was that you'd take your smartphone or tablet, you'd locate the moon, even if it was below the horizon, you could still point it through the Earth and be like, that's where the moon is right now. And by finding it, you would unlock story time, photos, facts about the moon. It could have a variety of different education levels. So it could be, you know, like my favorite book up here over my shoulder, Goodnight Moon, that, you know, is for the younger kids, but then, you know, it unlocks more advanced things depending on the age. So you could even unlock novels like A Moon is a Harsh Mistress, or there's the list is endless. It's within all of our culture. It's in our music. It's in obviously the photographs that were taken and they're constantly taken. The database of photos is just increasing and increasing with every mission that goes to the moon. So there's endless resources that are available online. It's just a matter of how do you organize them? How do you program a phone to have the relative Earth, Sun, Moon locations so that your IMUs can pick up where it is? So it's a good way of looking at both how you can program the hardware that you've got on your phone or tablet or whatever, and then mixing that with actual added value for kids and families. So that's kind of the brief snapshot of what it is.
Thanks. And so, yeah, I think some of the questions that we received earlier, oh yeah, it's just, and sorry, I was looking at it and I just lost it. But but yeah, I think this will be really fun. It's culture is a big part of how we influence people and has been with us for a long time and mixing with education. So I look forward to seeing what people come up with. And let's see, the next one we'll move on to is geotagging, space and aviation. And so this one came from someone who he at the Space Center plays a lot of geo-based games. And so there's geo-based games and tools and applications and stuff. And so he basically was like, I go to the visitor center, I want to be able to have more challenges and portals to go through and things that I can unlock when I'm there. And so it's really been extended, though, to all kinds of things, whether we're talking about, when you're in visitor centers at space centers, or if you're in museums that have anything to do with space and aviation, or if you're just in, in somewhere that, you don't necessarily know that there's going to be a space or aviation one, you could add layers to it. So, maybe driving through a town and then, you could learn that, oh, this is an astronaut's hometown. Or this is where, some test took place that you weren't even aware of. Or, especially here in the US, we go on a lot of road trips. And so it could be something fun to learn there. And so for this one, some of the questions people have been asking is about whether or not they would be creating their own application versus adding on to their other. And as we said before, it's really up to you what you want to do. Our vision of this is that a lot of these games and tools are already out there, and it'd be really more adding on to them, so that in addition to all the other information and challenges that they already have on there, we would just be increasing the kinds of ones that are related to space and aviation. And so, well, all the challenges can be very broad. This one has lots of broad applications. And so one of our suggestions is maybe try and focus on one area or one tool, at least to start with, but just see what you can add to it. And basically, adding, that hidden, geo-based tools are interesting because it's like a hidden layer of information that you unlock when you're actually there. So hopefully that adds, kind of an element of fun about learning about something, because it's something that applies to where you actually are. And I think those were the main questions. But again, if you guys have anything more, let us know. And we'll be doing, I can talk about that. I'll see. Oops. And yeah, Sarah actually has a question, Ryan, for you about Book It to the Moon. So I can read that aloud to you.
Sure.
So for Book It to the Moon, would having a hardware piece that points in the direction of the object, the moon or the sun, which would be calibrated and controlled by a phone or other small configure, fit into the criteria of this challenge?
That's really cool. Yeah, that's the whole point, is that the idea is to interact with the moon and to create stories by, both, figuring out where it is, but then inspiring people about learning about it. So yeah, that would be really cool to have on my desktop, like, where's the moon right now, and having something pointing at where it is. And yeah, that's very cool. Very cool idea.
So
thanks.
Yep. It might give you an idea of like, oh, that's right, you know, the moon's coming up soon. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool. Even like I know that there's a company that's spun off of that's similar to that, although that moves a little bit quicker. Um, but that gives you learning to rise and set. And yeah, you could do that for other celestial objects, of course. So good idea.
And it can give people, you know, especially youngers, just the concept of these objects are moving around us and it's on the other side of the world. And it can be fun also, just, you know, hardware projects for kids are always great too.
Yeah,
Good
I mean, you'd end up seeing basically a needle or something turning around, pointing, and you could actually figure out, oh, that's the orbit of the moon, or that's how we're rotating relative to the moon, because the moon is tidally locked, so it's always the same side that faces the Earth. So it's really interesting to think about the phase of the moon too, when you physically know where it is, and you know where if it's during the daytime and it's pointing to where it is, you can get an idea of what the surface of the moon might look like later on as we hit twilight or something else. So it's just kind of a fun thought experiment to have as well.
Oh yeah, and that's where the phase of the moon, if you had something that pointed both of the sun and where the moon were, you had two independent kind of pointers. That's where you could get a really good idea of how the phases work and how they interact. So,
I think for the moon, that you'd have some kind of, you know, indicator to tell you which way to point your phone. It's not just find the moon, but it's, you know, this way, that way, and so you could actually, you know, rotate around to find it. You could increase the challenge by maybe if you want people to actually search for it, then you'd be like, either search for it or let us guide you to the moon.
So yeah, it's hard. These challenges, you're like, oh, there's so many awesome things I could do.
Yeah.
How do I pare down to that one that's really going to be something great to accomplish on the weekend, and what do I save for later?
Yeah, you've got 48 hours, so don't promise us the moon, because
yes, we would say we want you to, you know, the important thing is you show up with something when it comes to judging, something that's complete.
Yeah.
And it may not have all the features you talked about, but it's something, it's a product of some sort.
Right.
It's always great to see. Okay, and then the final challenge we'll be talking about today, and this is the Kennedy Space Center. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that. They're doing testing of our fire alarm, but if you see that and I don't leave, it's because I've been told that it's a test. So, and not one that I have to evacuate for. So this is one where the challenge launched a global experience is using multimedia resources found online, develop a virtual experience that would allow someone to experience a past or upcoming rocket launch as if they were observing it from a few miles away, which is, you know, there's a safety distance that we always keep people away of usually at least a few miles. Very few people are any closer than that. And then also, we ask people to convey the impact of local, global, and space weather on a launch, weather is a huge part of whether a launch can happen that day, which I kind of liken it to, you don't see really NASCAR races in snow. They're high-performance vehicles, but you don't use them under certain conditions. The rockets are the same way. You know, we try and make them as robust as possible, but there are limits, and we don't want to ever launch a rocket if we think that something's going to either cause it to fail or not make mission. So and so we've had different questions on this. This is something where, and we talked about it yesterday. We had a Google Hangout that was about what it's like to experience a launch in person. And so this one, we didn't really focus on anything technical. It was just more about, as people, we had somebody who'd experienced their first launch, and then people who'd seen different numbers of launches over the years, just talk about what their experiences are like. Because when you watch something online through that video camera, and there's really these tied up angles, and the angles are changing lots of times. It's a very different experience than watching in person. And so there's just a lot more things you feel, the sound and the vibrations when they reach you, the reactions of people and nature around you, how the rocket moves in relation to you, because you're static. When you're watching a rocket launch, you usually are kind of staying in one place during the entire time. It's a very different experience, which I think is just amazing. It's an amazing one. I go out and watch every time there's a rocket launch. And just a lot of that doesn't come through. on the video and audio. So we're just looking for different ways that some of those experiences watching a launch in person could be portrayed to people who are on the other side of the globe. And so there's lots of different technologies that help impart different feelings or different senses. And then there's the whole virtual reality. So, and I don't think we didn't have anything where we found 360 degrees video that you could download. There's examples that that do exist of some of watching a launch, and you can move the camera around like 360 and use it if you have with some of the different tools. So there's a couple examples out there, but really there's many different ways you could come up with solutions. And so we're just looking for ideas people have to basically try and bring that experience to people that aren't able to travel for launch, or even if people travel for launch but for some reason it's delayed due to either weather or mechanical or range issues, because those do happen. So yeah, watching launch is an incredibly important experience in my life. It has been since I started working here, and I want to share it with the rest of the world. It's basically what this comes down to. So I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything else to, any questions or anything, any comments, as somebody who also has watched quite a few launches since you've moved here. Nope. So I'm not sure if we. Oh.
It's pretty amazing. It's, you know, I've seen photos and videos, but each one is so unique that it's like I try to drop everything to be part of it, to be there. Even if I'm further away than I would like to be, I still, you know, try to do whatever I can to watch it. And the furthest I was away is about 2 hours away from the coast down south. And I still kind of dragged my family out and said, okay, I know it's not likely, but we're going to stand out here, and you never know, because there might be a hole that opens up in the sky, and that you see the contrails. You know, so even that is, you know, a cool experience, because just thinking about how something just blasted off the Earth and is rocketing towards space, you know, put up a satellite, or more importantly, it's one of the coolest things ever. So here in Florida, we're at the rate of about 1 launch a month. That rate is increasing. We thought that this year would be about 2 a month, but there's a lot of delays last year with a couple accidents, so things kind of got pushed off a little bit longer than they were supposed to be. But you know, we're going to be at a rate where it is every 2 weeks, and of course it'll become more and more frequently. But if you think about that, if you're on a vacation for just say 2 weekends, vacation or something in Florida, then you know the likelihood of seeing a launch becomes really good. Obviously, there's lots of delays in launching, but just statistically, that's pretty cool. And if it becomes, you know, a rate of once a week, then you're, you know, almost guaranteed to see something. And that I'm looking forward to, you know, our daily launches and in multiple launches per day, and we'll see how things go. But things are definitely increasing in the rate.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe Gattaca when he goes out every day to watch the launches.
Yeah.
So I would love to be that much. So we have another question about the printed rocket one from Mustafa. What the challenge means by their words, transport from the factory directly to the launch pad, and what about the factory here? And meaning the VAB or main stages. So that was talking about kind of the idea of the vehicle assembly building being a factory, whereas right now it's really an assembly point. The factories for rockets are really the ones that we use here in Florida are really spread throughout the U.S. And I mean, things from places like Utah, and Colorado, and Alabama are some of the common ones, but it's really from different places in the U.S. And so even there, they're getting parts from kind of all over the U.S. and in some cases the world that gets shipped to their factories, and they put everything together, and then the final assembly will take place in Florida. But since we were interested in parts actually being built in the vehicle assembly building, at that point it becomes a little bit more factory-like versus just assembly. And so so you would still, as we mentioned, probably we'd expect the parts will be built outside of it and then shipped here, or else even in a different area of the VAB. But it is, you know, it's a big space, but it is limited in how much square footage they have. So that's what we meant by going from the factory directly from the launch pad, is that the vehicle assembly building would become a little bit more like a factory than it has been used previously. And it's only a couple mile trip from there to the Launch Complex 39 A and B pads. So what did you hold up? I couldn't see.
Oh, C.
Oh, C. Oh, yes. There's also, that's right. I forgot we do have a new pad, Launch Complex 39C, a smaller one. But yes, it is a rocket pad, right, that we've got out here. So hopefully that answers your question. And so as we were just talking about launch, one note, and this is true for the 5 KSC challenges, which again, those are the Space Route 66, Geotagging, Space and Aviation, Print My Rocket, Backfill My Model, and Launch Global Experience. What we will be doing is anyone who solves these challenges, and regardless of whether or not you're nominated for global judging, if you create a video for one of those 5 challenges, I can promise a Kennedy Spacer employee will watch it. We're going to have, for each of the challenges, put together a panel, and so they'll review all the projects that submit videos, and the ones with the high caliber videos, they'll look a little bit closer at the projects, and we'll select a winner from each of those challenges. So we'll have 5 different winners from the Kennedy Space Center challenges, and so those will each be recognized on social media by us. And then from those 5, we'll pick one team, which will be the overall KSC winner. And so the global winners, there's 6 global winners each year, and they are invited to a launch viewing opportunity, which, and so we're able to have that one team that's the overall Kennedy Space Center winner will also be invited with the global winners to come watch a launch viewing opportunity. So, so just a reminder that if you work on our challenges, plan on putting together that video, and the submittal date is by April 29th at midnight Pacific time, which is 700 GMT. So we look forward to seeing everyone's videos and projects and just seeing what you guys come up with. We'll be looking at some of the ones beyond just those to do the videos, but if you do the video, I can guarantee we'll look at your project. So, and I'm not seeing any more questions. Right? Do you have anything to add?
No, just good luck to everyone who participates. It'll be a lot of fun. You know, you'll meet some cool people. It might lead to just so you might get, you don't know each other that well, so you might get on each other's nerves a bit, but just, you know, focus on the product, and you guys are happy with whatever results you have. And as Callie mentioned earlier, that, you know, you really want to have at least the final product or the final concept that you can present. It's a great idea to make a video anyway. That's the best out of looking at these things, because you know, not everyone's gonna be able to download the apps and try them out, but if you've got a cool video that shows what your app is supposed to do or the concept, then you don't have to worry about all the bugs, but at least you can demonstrate the overall flow of the way it would function. And sometimes that can lead to, you know, advancing the app if, you know, you choose to do that later on. So good luck to everyone, and to the moon.
Yes. So yeah, it's great to have a way to preserve it. And I forgot to mention, you know, I think I talked about with 3D Backfill how that really connects to our Kennedy works. We have to do the geotagging and the Launch Global Experience ones relate to a lot of our education work that we do here. The printed rocket one relates a lot to just we are building rockets in the vehicle assembly building, and we're, you know, it's a building that's been around for decades, but we're using it in new ways all the time, and so we're always looking at it. And we have a center planning development office that they are constantly working to see, you know, where is space going in the future? How can we prepare ourselves for it, for all the different users, and make sure that we're in a position to do a lot of good work. So we really look forward to seeing everyone's projects, and we hope you have a really good time this weekend working on it, and meet a lot of great people at your different events. And we'll be online through social media, so I'll be posting a couple more links to the Hangouts, such as the one that talks about all the prize stuff, and some more social media ones you can find through our Google Place page. So, all right. Everyone have a great weekend. Bye, Ryan.
Bye. Space.